Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've been waiting for. A podcast for podcasters. This is Creating the Greatest Show, and I'm your host, Casey Cheshire. Join me as we interview podcast hosts and investigate the ingredients of a successful interview podcast. We'll talk mistakes, earned skills, powerful questions, and more. This show is sponsored by Ringmaster, completely done for you B2B podcast production. Okay, I hit the button. Exciting. It's like I've hit the button on the roller coaster ride and I am locked in and all of you are locked in and we are going on this adventure. I can't wait to introduce my guest today. She is an absolute badass. She is well known in the podcasting industry and you will know soon enough why that is. She's a leader, a speaker, a marketer, a podcaster, a learner, and a founder. She's passionate about authentic brand building. We could easily turn this into a marketing podcast or a SaaS podcast. She is the host of the Casted podcast, if that clues you in. CEO and co-founder of Casted, Lindsay Tjepkema. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. That was lovely, Casey. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm going to have you introduce me more often.
I'll be your hype guy. I'll walk around with a boombox and I'll be like, oh, ladies and gentlemen, you know.
I like it. I'll take it.
So I'm glad you're here. I can't wait to open up your brain and just learn from you for a bit of time here, because your experience with Casted and all the podcasts you interact with and also the ones that you've hosted and host yourself is so much in there. And I can't wait to just sort of I got my paper ready and my pen ready. So I'm ready to go. So pull back the curtain for us on your show and share your most important strategy for a great podcast.
Okay. Well, feeling is mutual. I think that we're going to get really geeked out, getting very, very meta about podcasting on your podcast.
Right.
Yeah, I think for me, the peeling back the curtain, the secret sauce, the top priority for me is the human connection. You know, it's being the CEO of a tech company. I wish I could tell you that it's all about the tools and the tech and those things really, really matter. But to me, it's all about the human connection. That's what people listen for, watch for, is to see a couple of people really interacting and getting to join in on that kind of like really two-way conversation between two human beings. So,
Yeah. You know what? We are birds of a feather here. When I founded Ringmaster, I made our company why to create human connection. Right. And it's weird because we're in this industry where it's very much, you've got podcasting ROI and we've got all sorts of logical things to try to point out at brand exposure and all these different things. But at the end of the day, there's something about two people focused completely on themselves. What kind of clued you into that? Like, have you always known that it's been human connection, or has that been an evolution for you?
that's always been my thing. It's funny.
Yeah.
I was actually doing, so I was pulling together a whole bunch of video clips, as one should, for something else that I'm working on. And I went back to our launch party. So February 2020, which was right before the entire world changed, of course.
Right.
But we had our big launch party. So we had just raised our seed round. And the talk that I gave was all about, I was like, I didn't start Casted because I love podcasting. I started Casted because I love authentic conversations and human connection.
Damn.
And, we all went on to learn just how important human connection is firsthand during things like the pandemic. It's a basic human need. We need each other. And that makes it a basic business need. And I think the best marketers know that. The most human brand wins, always has, always will, regardless of what tech or trends emerge. The brands that get it right and have the most loyal followings are the ones that really prioritize getting creative about human connection.
Wow. All right. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to drink. I have some caffeine here. So we are off to the races here. Basic human need. That feels right. Equals a basic business need. Is it? I want it to be. I feel like it is.
Yeah. Whether people want to admit it or not, I mean, the basics of who we are as human beings is we need each other. Like other species, other animals can exist alone. Humans can't.
Like whales, just hanging out in the ocean.
Yeah, just doing their own thing. Yeah, eagles flying around by themselves. But we need each other, and the brands that get that, even if it's subconsciously, the brands that innately, intrinsically get that and try to connect with each other on a human to human level as opposed to a brand to buyer level, those are the ones that we all want to buy from. Even if it's that intangible thing, the brands that wish to succeed and the brands that will ultimately survive are the ones that see the humans in themselves and relate to the humans in their audience.
Mm.
That it's a basic business need. It's a basic foundation of a successful business.
Have you had much pushback from people in a sort of a business perspective? Folks who maybe aren't aware of this lesson and they're sort of fixated on, all the other things, all the other trappings, and they kind of miss the point. Do you have to, what is the process for beating them into understanding? Like how do you try to educate people around you about this?
Yeah, I maybe I should do more beating of the drum.
Yeah.
I I think where I run into it is I see all of the fanfare and reverie, and idolatry around tech, right? Which again, I lead a tech company. Tech is a good thing. It's when it gets put on a pedestal as the thing, that we get into a dangerous spot. Of course, let's see, how far are we into this recording? 6 minutes. We got 6 minutes into it without, and I'm about to say the words AI. Um, right now it's
Should we drink every time we
yeah. I'll be very hydrated. Um, but AI is amazing. AI is going to change everything. I'm not here to say that that's not the case. We're implementing AI into Casted right now. It is a
Yeah.
good thing. It's not the thing. And I think where I get really frustrated, and again, maybe I should beat the drum on this more often,
Yeah.
is when it's like AI is going to change everything. AI is the answer. No, people using AI in a way that helps them create, again, connect with other humans is the way. That is the thing. And again, the brands that the brands and the businesses, the marketers and the leaders that see AI, generally speaking, because AI is billions of things,
Right.
as an opportunity to be more effective and more efficient and more creative as human beings, it actually gets us more to our humanness, more to, authentic conversations. It opens up that capability. Or you can get obsessed with it and say, no, 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 we can actually be less human and less authentic because we can have the robots do everything, which it's tempting because those are the ones, the tortoise and the hare. That's the hare that's winning the race right now. It's like, I
Right.
just wrote 56 blog posts in the last 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay. Um, but but remember who won that race. Slow and steady, and the ones that are looking at tech, which right now is AI, and other assets, Casted included, looking at it as ways to be more effective, more efficient, more human, more creative. Um, that's what's going to win. And so, yeah, I do get frustrated with all of the fanfare and reverie around idolizing just doing more for the sake of doing more because you can, because AI.
Yeah, that's a trap that even marketers fall under, which is the activity mindset of if I'm doing stuff, then that must be great. To your point, it'll go underappreciated, but the idea of your quote, I wish I made this the quote of the show. We won't do that, but 56 blog posts. Okay. Like now what? Like
Cool.
great, good for you. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is anyone gonna read them? Are they even good? Maybe they are, maybe okay, you made
Yeah.
them, but that's not it. That's not what's gonna move the needle, and
Yeah.
that's certainly not moving you closer. It's almost like a spectrum, right, of, like, more human, less human, and I really like how you brought up the fact that this does have the opportunity to highlight more of the human aspects.
Yeah.
As you have AI doing more and more of the things that it can do, you can either run away or you can embrace and say like, "Okay, where's my humanness really impacting here?"
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
I mean, it's are you a machine? Are you a factory? Is output the goal? No.
Right.
connection is the goal. And yeah, and we have a real opportunity to get even more connected as humans because of all of the tech advancements and innovation that's emerging around us. So we'll get there.
We will. We will. And, jokes on everyone listening to the show because neither of us are actually here. These is two of our AIs talking to
This is
each
my
other.
avatar.
This is your avatar. That's my avatar. And we had ChatGPT write up the script. So
Mhm.
we're both sipping on pina coladas and doing our
Yeah,
jobs. And yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
nice to meet you. Yeah.
that's the secret. Yeah.
Right. Right. So I would love to take it a step further, right? We we talked connection. Now let's talk what makes great connection, right?
Mm.
Let's really geek out. I'd love to. What have you seen? What builds connection and what detracts from it? What are the things that, if you think about, okay, human connection's it. That's why we're doing this. There's other things too, but human connection. What have you seen add to that and then take away from?
I think especially speaking in terms like this is a show about shows, right? And so especially speaking about shows, I think there are a lot of temptations. There's also a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people saying that you should like, oh, talk about your product and make sure that you get prospects on and talk to them and get them really interested. Use the show as an opportunity to talk to them about your product. And then when the show's over, then you can talk to like, what's that about? Like that's not for your
Right.
audience. Like that, sure, maybe that's a good opportunity to connect with your guest, but your show is about your audience, right? And when you keep that as a top priority, that you as the host are there to serve your audience, right? And so if you can connect with your guest on behalf of your audience and get really curious ab- on their behalf, and answer the questions, ask the questions that they want to know about, that's where you get into something special. It's I'm not going to just ask about, the questions that I'm not going to send over a canned list of questions and then go through them one by one. I'm going to try not to ask all of the same questions that all of the other interviewers are asking this author or thought leader. I'm going to try to get really natural and human and again, connect on a human level, whether it's places you've been or things you've done or some connection that we have or your kids or your company, and
Yeah.
because that draws I feel like we should also, like, take a sip every time we say the word human. That draws the
Yeah. I'm
humanness out
ready.
of that conversation and that we're gonna be so hydrated and caffeinated because, there's all kinds of research too around, podcasts as a medium, but then also the format of, like, a conversation. They really do hit different. They hit a different part of your brain because you feel like you're part of the conversation and it builds trust. It builds, there's an intimate factor there that as an audience member, you really feel like you're in on something, which is why they're so successful. So if you can really be conscious of that and know who your audience is and represent them, you think it talk show hosts. I mean, Oprah does a really good job of that. She asks the questions that you want her to ask. She connects with the guests on a really human level. She doesn't just say like, "Hey, tell me about your book. Why did you write your book? What's your book about? Where can people buy your book?"
Right.
I wrote a book once. My book was about this. If you want to buy it, you can buy it here. Like it's just having a conversation. The more authentic that you can be, the more that your audience is really going to appreciate it.
Authentic conversation. And when I hear authentic, I hear, saying the answer you want to say to and asking the question you want to ask and
Mhm.
not. Yeah, I heard you say, not canned questions, not the same questions, not, and not the unnatural questioning. It's very much a conversation. Is there anything you do to sort of get yourself in that mindset? How do you prepare yourself for that kind of intimate setting in an authentic conversation?
I try to get to know if I don't already. First of all, I try to interview people that I already know at least a little bit. That's certainly not the case all the time. It's probably only half or maybe 2/3 of the time, but that helps, right? If you have
Yeah.
any backstory, you can be like,
Oh, yeah.
Casey and I met here, and oh gosh, remember when we worked together at that place? Like it makes it more natural. If I don't, I try to do at least a little bit of background, as everybody should, um, just to ask some of those kind of unique questions of like, hey, I'm gonna go back a ways, and I know that you're from this place, or I read once that you did this one thing. Based on that, how do you feel like that has impacted what you're doing now, which is what everybody else is talking to you about? And just tried to get a little bit of a unique angle, not for any other agenda, not for any other reason other than being interesting um, for the audience and actually for the guests too, because the more engaged they are, the more natural and interesting the conversation will be.
How much do you like to prepare questions versus asking on the fly? And has that evolved for you over time?
Um, I like much more to just do it on the fly, but I do like to have an outline because I think otherwise it can really easily and accidentally go like you can have a missed opportunity, even though it can be a really great conversation. Did I pull out of it what the guest really wanted to come on and talk about? I keep kind of a default using as an example, like let's say they have a book. If I accidentally don't talk about their book at all because we just had a really good conversation about cooking, then cool. But what a missed opportunity. But and also I have found that the guests really appreciate having like it's like what are we going to talk about, and typically want to have some idea of which direction it's going to go. That said, I always say I'm going to take this wherever it leads us. And at any point, if you want to bring us back, let's do that. But yeah, I like to just be a little bit more on the fly personally.
Me too. Me too. And what's cool about this show is like you said already, it's meta because we're like talking about it while on it and talking about it. Is some of my other shows like the Hardcore Marketing Show has these like milestone questions. Never that giant list of things where I ignore your answer and go right to the next
Yes.
question. I agree. That is
Good
just
answer. Next
the work.
question.
I know, right? Or, okay, yeah, uh, cool. They just poured, and we had one podcast we listened to and we try to give feedback, and
Mhm.
accidentally somebody had shared like one of the most powerful things you'd hear on a B2B podcast, and the host wasn't thinking, and they just went like, "All right, so my next question I want to ask you," we're like, "Whoa, dwell in that moment, be there."
Yeah.
Holy crap, man, but the reason I brought that up is that, the other show has some milestones we get to. This one, it is sort of evolved. We have the same question we start out with,
Hmm.
and my outline, I have a good 25 questions, 3 different sections
Yeah.
we could go to, and I think initially I did use those sections, but over time, I've found that if the conversation is going well and we're excited, we're talking about things, and it is a conversation, so
Hmm.
it's not just you answering, me asking, then there's always something else to talk about.
Yeah. I think that having an outline, having a list of questions is good because you never know. Like I'm sure you have too. I've had those interviews where you ask a question and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, I thought about that," and you're like, "Okay."
Cool.
Um, Here's another question. And they're like, "Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, I found that too." And you're like, "Okay." And so it's good to have like conversation starters. And also having some structure to make sure like if your show is all about having actionable insights, make sure you get actionable insights out of it, because otherwise you can really accidentally have just a really good conversation. And then you're like, dang it, my listeners were expecting, a few key takeaways. I will also say, and you kind of alluded to this too, I'm not saying that's the right way. Like that's just what we're doing with our show right now. I'm actually thinking because we're in between seasons, we're going to be doing some changes, and I'm like, this is a really cool opportunity to say what do we want to do differently, and we're actually looking at maybe doing more structure, just because I think it might be fun and a fun change. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I don't think everybody should go into their show and say, let's just have a really great conversation. I think sometimes it's really fun to listen to a show that's like has segments and like first we do this and then I ask you some questions and then we play this little game and then it's so there's no
Yeah,
right or wrong way. I think you just have to ask what who's it for, why are you doing it, and what works best for your brand.
right. And next, the lightning round.
Yeah.
This is where Bjorn inserts the lightning into our show, and off we go. Yeah, yeah. I think it's fun too, right? Mixing it up, and you brought up a cool topic, the idea of seasons. And
Hmm.
initially, I was not a fan of seasons because it felt like a excuse to quit.
Mhm.
Um, but where I've evolved to understand it is an excuse to evolve, right?
Mm.
And so, which I found is really necessary because my marketing pod, 350 plus episodes, it's getting hard to stay interested and not have the same conversation. And if I'm not into it, then like the whole thing just blows
Yeah.
up and it's torture, right? So
Yep.
you got to change it up. So tell me more about this season turnover change and what kind of innovations you're thinking.
Yeah, and I recommend this all the time to our customers at Casted.
Cool.
We don't get into strategy, but certainly we get asked all the time, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "Well, here's some thoughts. Do with them what you will." Um, I love seasons because once upon a time, we didn't do seasons. When my first podcast ever, it was just I think it was every Wednesday at 10 a.m. forever and ever, always. And that got really
Yep.
hard because then if you ever wanted to make any changes, it was like it felt so abrupt and like jarring to be like, "We're gonna take a pause now after
Yeah.
50 episodes, we're going to take a break, and then we're gonna come back different." Like, it felt like there was something wrong. Whereas, when we started the Casted podcast, we've always done seasons. They change. Sometimes a season is 4 episodes, sometimes it's 15. And, the thing that you always, always, always need to be r sure that you keep the same is who it's for, right? Because you have people that subscribe, you have people that tune in and they'll at least pay attention to your show. Just don't change who your intended audience is. Other than that, if you're serving like we serve B2B marketers that have shows, you don't want to change that up on them, but like what's interesting to them? Would they be interested in different topics? Like when it was in the time of pandemicness, we talked about how that was changing marketing strategies, and that was what we did for a little while. And then we talked to industry thought leaders for another couple seasons about the role that podcasts and video content play in your overall marketing strategy. We did one that was explicitly CMOs. We
Hmm.
did a couple seasons that were only our customers,
Wow.
speaking specifically about not it was not a commercial for Casted, but it was just like, "Hey, these are our customers. We're gonna tell you what they're doing." And so I think that that can be really fun. It lets you change things up. It gives you excuse to change things like even your music or your host without it being really jarring.
That's a great point. An excuse to change things, and I would say there's less risk because you're not telling people this is like a permanent change to the show. This is
Yep.
just, new season, trying something new out. If you hate it, maybe a 4 episode season, like no big deal.
Yeah.
But you're still our audience. That was such a key point that made a lot of sense. Change up anything you want, but remember these people came and they subscribed for a reason.
Mhm.
So you would be shooting yourself in the foot to suddenly go from marketers to IT or
Right.
finance. Like what am I listening to? And
Yep.
and that would be a shame. But mixing it up and trying a new segment, right?
Mhm.
Trying new music, that's actually a cool idea to give people a clue that it's
Yeah.
a new thing.
Yeah.
Um, wow. Couple things I wanted to go back to. You have said this more than AI, and it's my listeners.
Mm.
And I definitely, from having conversations on this pod, have gotten a sense that people are either host centric, like it is all about the host. This is probably not the one I recommend of the three. It's or it's all about the guest, which can
Mhm.
be positive and have its traits, or it's all about the audience. And I've heard you say my listeners, talk to me about, you mentioned your job is to serve them. Talk to me about how you think about them when you do season changes and you mix it up.
Um, I think it's the content marketer in me. Like what
Yeah.
is any of it for if you don't have an audience? Like if we didn't have an audience, you and I would just basically be on a Zoom call. Like, you know, just having a conversation, which is cool, but that's not what your goal
So
is,
you're
you know?
assuming people are listening to
I
this?
also
Is that what you're saying?
Are you even recording this? Is this just you and
Is
me?
this thing on?
Yeah.
Tap, tap.
But I think, truly, like, that's what it's for. If it were about the host, which of my show is me, then, that's that doesn't feel like a very good recipe for success for anyone.
No.
And if it's about the guest, that's cool, but, like, then you could just have a conversation, or you could record it. I don't know, it just the audience is everything. Like, what is it if you don't have an audience? What's a business without customers? What's a show without an audience? Um, and so everything you asked, like, how does that adjust the lens through which I see the show and
Yeah.
act as the host? I try really hard to act as if, it's funny, I don't think I've ever really thought about this before, but act as if they're right there listening, like, live. And, you know, just because I know something or don't know something or have some context or don't have some context, I try to seek clarity and, um, dig a little deeper on behalf of the audience because, um, that's what they're there for. They're not there for because they hope that I have a good conversation. They're not there because they hope that the guest has a good time. They're there because they're looking to get something out of it. And I think that's your responsibility, as a show host and actually as a guest too. It's not about you. It's about, the people who are watching and listening.
Yeah, I wonder how many guests think that or
Hmm.
realize that it's about the audience too. Because
Mhm.
oftentimes as a guest, you're often, you know, it's like graciously happy to be a guest on the show so that you can get the word out, promote your stuff, your
Sell the
brand, whatever it
thing.
is.
Yeah.
So I love that you're taking the natural extension of saying, hosts, don't forget to think about, make it central that you're thinking about my listeners, but also guests, think about your listeners. And that brings up
Mhm.
ideas of like doing prep calls and talking about who is the audience, right? And
Mhm.
not getting on a show and not being very, very clear that B2B marketers and podcasters are listening to the
Yeah.
right, or to
Or is
whatever,
it entrepreneurs
or
or
is it not right,
manufacturing
right.
CFOs? Yeah, because that skews how you should answer everything, I mean, if I know it was an audience of, um, you know, business owners and leaders, you'd talk more about, like, the ROI of things and the top level results, or if it's more end user type people, you talk about how it's done, and here's tips for what I would do if I was in your shoes. And, I just think that's really important, and I've I know not everybody thinks that way. I don't maybe I'm the wrong maybe I'm
Screw
completely
them.
wrong, but, I get asked quite often, like, "Why don't you talk more about Casted on the Casted podcast?" And I'm like, "Well, because that's what commercials are for." Like, I
Right,
don't I
right.
mean, people if people want to learn more about Casted, there's lots of other ways to do that, and I hope that joining into the show, they get a sense for some of the people they'd be interacting with and the higher level insights about why Casted even exists in the first place and,
Yeah,
why what we're all doing and talking about matters. I don't know. I just think the content, any and all content exists ultimately to build trust. And you do that through entertainment, engagement, and just really good content. Yeah. By
yeah.
engaging, entertaining, or educating.
Okay, so we're definitely gonna go, to that in a second, but I had a real funny, question for you because you brought it up. Have you ever had a guest, like, forget or not care who the audience is, and or maybe speak to their default audience?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Where it's, yeah. Yes.
I don't know if you have felt that awkward moment internally. I think for me, it was like someone who's used to talking to independent freelancers or, you know, I don't know, something different, and they didn't get the note that like this is B2B marketing pod or this is a
Mhm.
podcast, and then they're talking to you're like, who are they talking to?
Yeah.
And it's not obvious what's going on until you have situations where it doesn't go right. Then you're like, oh yeah, that's weird. They're talking to there's the a host listening, there's the audience listening, and then there's this other group who aren't listening and they're being talked to. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely had that. And I think that's actually a really good example is B2C and B2B they're just different, especially when you get into podcasts. And or like the influencer or creator or that kind of thing. It's just a different world. And so I've gotten into some of those where it's more like the add to cart influencer mentality. And I'm like, okay.
That's exactly That's
Yeah.
exactly the type that, I chatted with one time that wasn't sure who was listening.
Yeah.
Can you That's really interesting because sometimes we say it's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's H to H, it's human to human, which it
hmm
is. But from a
hmm
podcast perspective, what are the big differences you've seen between B2B and B2C type podcasts?
To me, I mean, the first place my mind goes when you ask me that question, it's on the back end. I get asked about that a lot as, you know, representing a company that is specifically serves B2B podcasting. What's the difference? I mean, why can't I just use X, Y, and Z? And to me, the biggest difference is the business model. It's the entire why are you doing it? B2B, of course, caveat, there's exceptions to every rule, but broadly speaking, B2B
Totally.
um, is more of a long-term, trust building, um, play where there's no add to cart, there's no discount code, there's no coupon, there's typically no ads quite often. It's, "Hey, I am a thought leader in this space, and I'm gonna interview other thought leaders because in doing so, as people listen to our conversations, they're going to see me and therefore the brand that I represent as trusted guides in this space." And ongoing, those people will keep coming back. They'll dig in a little deeper. They will trust me. They'll trust this brand. They'll trust the other content that I provide. And longer term, they'll ask to see a demo, connect with a salesperson, and down the line, I will have a customer. That's the
Yeah.
B2B play. I want to know what brands are engaging, who is engaging, so that maybe they can be part of my ABM strategy or my target account strategy. B2C, or more of a direct to consumer or influencer strategy, is typically um, I want to get you really interested in me or the brand I represent so that even during the conversation, you might add to cart. You might hear the ad, click the coupon code, use the promo code, buy the thing, register for the thing, purchase the ticket, um, go to the site right then. It's much more of a quick action play. And so it's more important to know who, as far as demographics are concerned, is listening. Do I have an audience of 20 to 30-year-old women on the West Coast because that's who I'm trying to get to buy my product today. So
Yeah.
the metrics that you need to know are different. Um, Advertising or lack thereof is a differentiator. Um, yeah.
Makes total sense. I think there's a reason. I just like the B2B, the considered sale, the thoughtful. No, I can't just click a button and spend 10 or 100 grand, right? I need to,
Yeah.
like, think about this and weigh the options, and
If you figure that out, though, let me know because that would be
I
great.
know, right? Well, I gotta
Add to
say, like,
cart.
you gotta
Check
watch
out
out
now.
for Instagram. I don't know about you, but I've bought, like, 2 things in one sitting and then, like, going to buy the 3rd from the 3rd ad, and I'm like, "What am I doing? I didn't opt this platform." They have me figured out so
Need to
well.
go
They're
for
like,
a
"Well,
walk.
you need more hiking stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah, I do actually. Thanks." Click,
I
click, click,
do.
click.
I don't even hike, but I'm going to, and I'm gonna need all these
Right?
things.
"You need a slack line." "Yeah, I do."
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Couple times now we've talked about, or this word has come up, and it's not AI, but it's metrics.
Mm.
Let's talk metrics because it is all about, we're not saying it's the host, we're not saying it's the guest, it's the listener. And naturally the idea is like, well, we got to measure this. We got to have good stats, and I think this might even lead itself into a conversation about casting, but talk to me about just podcast metrics and how you view them and how you teach people to think about them.
Um, I view them as really frustrating and really silly, which is, why Casted exists because I was a marketer for 15 years. Still am, but that was all I did
Hell yeah.
at the time. And when I had my first show, I was actually working for a MarTech company, and I was excited to be like, "Cool, we're gonna have all these things. We're gonna know all this stuff." And I got like number of downloads. I was like, "Where's the rest of it? Where's everything else? How do I know who's listening?" And I think it's just really goofy that everybody's just it's getting better now, obviously, but for the longest time, it was like, "Oh, well, we get all of these metrics for all of these other things, but it's a podcast, so we're just gonna settle for just basically not having any information." Like, just number of downloads, that's fine, that's all we get, and everybody was just okay with that for the longest time. But, it's not that way anymore. Yes, Casted is part of the solution, and I'm really excited to see that there are other solutions popping up too, because the most important thing about a show, podcast and video, is to know who's engaging. Like, number of people, number of downloads, number of watches is great. Understanding what topics and themes or what episodes that you have, also super duper important. But if you don't know if it's a bunch of first graders in, I don't know why they'd be listening to your podcast en masse, but you never know, versus, your ideal buyer, if you don't know, does it what again, if you don't have an audience, what good is the show? So, yeah, I think the most important thing and what we get to, you said, how do I and how do we at Casted educate, our audience and our customers? We get asked all the time for benchmark. Like, "Do you have a benchmark report? Can you tell us, like, what does good look like? How
Oh,
many?"
yeah.
Yeah, but, like, it's cool to know who's listening, and which we reveal who is watching, who's listening, what brands, what people, but we still get asked all the time, "Yeah, but, like, this is great, but, like, what's good?" Like, a month after we launch a new season, should we be looking for 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 downloads? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. I mean, who is this for? Is this a really super niche show that targets the owners of plumbing, franchises in the
Right.
Midwest? Well, then your audience is probably going to be really small and you're going to be really, really successful if you know you're reaching all of them. And if you have 100 listeners ever, but they're all the right people and they're super engaged, then you're doing great. On
Yeah.
the other hand, if you're trying to reach like all the CFOs in the country, like, you're probably looking for a higher number. Um, so, yeah, I think those are the biggest things. Your top priority should be who is it for? Your second question you should ask yourself is why are you doing it? Because that sets up your goals. Is it in mass? Is it to resonate with a certain niche of people on a deeper level? And then and only then can you really start to say what does good look like for me for this show?
So you wouldn't exact so if I said, like, is 100 downloads per show a good number?
Yeah, I would say I don't know. Let's look at what you've been getting. Let's look at who it is, because if you're getting 100 downloads per show and it's like literally 100 of your 125 target accounts, I'd say success, right?
Very
But
successful.
if if you are a Fortune 500 company and you've been doing that show for 10 years and you're getting 100 downloads per show, I would say we have so much opportunity ahead of us. It's going to grow
Yes.
so fast. Um,
Yes, I'm happy to work with you, Fortune 500 company.
yes,
Let's
yeah,
fix
'cause
that. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
First, we'll put you on Casted, though, because we need to get some real stats. Don't the archaic, like, download counts remind you of the '90s? We just learned how to use the internet, and it's like a hit counter, a
Yeah.
little thing at the bottom of the site.
Yes!
"Oh, 13 people," and you hit
I have not
refresh, and now
thought
it's
of
like
those.
14 people, and
I haven't thought
and
of
then
those in
you were
years.
half the the reloads yourself. Like, "Oh, let me just hit refresh a few times, and that's it."
Yes.
And by the
Yes.
way, we do have a 5th grader listening, so shout out to my son, John, who is a frequent podcast listener.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no 1st graders allowed.
I also have 2 fifth graders, so Max and Harry might be listening too, you never know, and maybe they'll get their big brother Jack, and we will have a party here, Casey.
If those 3 listen to the podcast, it's gonna dramatically shift our numbers, you know, in our
We'll be
demographic.
all the rage on playgrounds across the country.
We get some ratings,
Yeah.
smash that like button. No.
Yes.
Ugh.
We will be lit for sure.
Oh
But
my gosh, lit, because, this podcast is fire,
oh, man. Yeah, bet.
and rain. Yeah. No cap there. Oh my gosh, the cringe factor of this podcast just went
Oh,
to 1,000.
no. Oh,
Do
no.
you do you ever have to deprogram people out of a vanity metric perspective when it comes to stats?
All the time. All the time. It's funny too, because downloads is actually also archaic because, um, we all stream everything. Like, You can download a podcast, but do you remember when that's how you used to have to listen? You had to download
Yeah.
it? That's where that number comes from. It's number of downloads. That's not a thing anymore. Like, it's just like how all in Word, the save button is still a floppy disk and
Yeah.
nobody uses floppy disks anymore. It's the
That's
same
so
thing.
true.
Like, nobody's downloading the podcast. That's not what that metric actually means. And so when you can remind people of that, it's like it doesn't, yes, it means something, but it's not the thing. Just like what we were saying earlier about AI. Yes, it's a thing. It's not the thing. The thing is the who. And downloads are one of the ways to say, is it going up? Is it going down? Is like, how many are we reaching? Are we reaching 10 people? Are we reaching 10,000 people? It's not the thing. And it's definitely not the indicator of success.
What are the cool stats I can see on Casted that I can't see on some janky free podcast hosting platform that just got bought by
Janky.
some other podcasting platform, and
Yeah.
they don't really care about any of that stuff.
I
They
think our
show me
cool factor is
downloads,
going
but
back up after we got really cringy because you said janky, and I haven't heard that word in a while, so
it's true.
I'm
That's pretty rad, right? Yeah, totally.
it's fresh.
So fresh.
So, okay, what we can do, we tell you who. That's where our biggest focus is, and we try to get better and better at that all the time. And so,
How who? What kinda who?
a few different ways. So we do all of the vanity metrics that we've talked about: number of downloads, number of listens and watches, number of exposures and impressions, where are people coming from, where are people going to when they listen. We do reveal all of that. I think that's super important. It's just that's not enough, right?
Yeah.
So we go next level down from there is we tell you what brands are actually engaging with your content. So um, we use an integration with Clearbit along with some other cool magical things behind the curtain to
Okay.
say, hey, what brands are actually engaging with your content? And then one layer beneath that, and it's regardless of where they're watching or listening. It's whether they're on Apple, Spotify, your website. Um, and then from there, we have integrations with CRM to say, okay, if somebody, if Casey's already in my Salesforce or HubSpot database and comes to my website or comes to the show, how do I know that not just, Ringmaster, but you actually are engaging? So we reveal that as well. Um, and yeah, beyond that, we also say, okay, cool. Now we know who. How about what? What topics, what themes are they engaging with? What keywords are they engaging with? And then we give you ways beyond that to say, cool, now that you know that, we're going to give you ways to make it really easy to repurpose and reuse that content that's engaging your audience. Because it's not just about hitting publish that one time. It's about using that content over and over again to really create that human connection. So, yeah.
That is super cool. Because knowing more about who's listening, especially it's like what marketing automation did for us back in the day where we're like, it's not just a Google funnel report showing us 43 people went this way. And we're like,
Yeah.
cool. Who was that again? Was it first graders running amok? Was it
Of
college
course, first
students doing
graders.
research for a
Yeah.
paper? Like, who is this? And then it's like, lo and behold, it's this company that you've been chasing, and now they're on your website. So to be able to bring that, really, it sounds like magic, that level of magic to
Yeah.
podcasting, that seems like an edge above other brands, if you're a brand doing podcasting.
Yeah. We actually one fun story, we had a customer that right when Casted Insights, that's what we call it, was launched, we were showing it to a customer and just we thought it was kind of funny. We were like, "Oh, yeah, and look at this. The Swiss Postal Service is engaging with your show. That's okay." They're like, "Wait, what?" We were like, "Yeah, right here, the Swiss Postal Service." They were like, "Wait, seriously?" And they were like they were a whale for this customer in the end. And they're like, "Wait, hang on, I gotta go tell the AE." Like, and they had like several hits from the Swiss Postal Service. And they're like, "This is
Whoa.
a big deal for us." So see, the who matters a lot more than the how many.
Man, that sales call had ROI written all over it. That's
I should go
awesome.
follow up with them and be like, "Did you close the Swiss Postal Service? What happened?"
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, you're welcome.
Yes. Yes,
That's
yes.
awesome.
Mhm.
Naturally, the evolution goes from if you have good metrics, you can start potentially. And I know we're not necessarily sponsor heavy because it is more of that B2B that we've talked about. but getting some promotions and maybe
Yep.
other podcasts wanting to promote on your show or vice versa, or getting your show promoted on their podcast. The idea of advertising and podcasting. And I
Yep.
know that Casted has gone in that direction, right? With
Mhm.
with ads. And so tell me more about that and where you see the ad market going.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely not a, "Hey, you're in B2B, don't do ads." I think it's just
Right.
tends to not go that direction, but we definitely see it. I think sponsorships, that's the right word. We see that very often, especially because, and I love this, quite often you'll see a brand do an event, and then they'll take the content from the event and they'll make it into an on-demand show. Call it what we want, a podcast, an on-demand show, a recap, and they'll get sponsors of the event, and or of the show, and we're like, "That's great. That's great that you're doing that. We can help you make that even better because we can tell you the who." As opposed to just like, "Hi, we're ABC Incorporated. You should sponsor this thing because we think these are the people we're targeting." You can say, "These are the people we're targeting, and also these are the people that are actually engaging." Um, and it allows you to charge more for sponsorships because and get more accurate with who are sponsors because they know who they're gonna reach, and you're able to really close the loop, as they do get behind your show.
Yeah. Have you have you considered doing any sponsorships for the Casted show? Or are you keeping it clear for the brand, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think we just haven't even thought of it. It's
Yeah,
just a
I know
thing
there's
we
like a
do.
thousand things, right? Putting
Yeah,
holes in dams and building new things and yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we haven't thought about it, but not for any reason other than we just haven't. Um, Maybe we should. Are you
You
saying
know
you would like to sponsor?
sure, sure, and you could sponsor my show too.
Yeah.
Um, so the reason I bring this up for you and all because I've been thinking about this myself is using it as a demonstration of the ability to do it, you know?
Mhm.
And the fact that we definitely help our clients get sponsorships and advertise and so less about getting ad revenue from it, but more about like demonstrating, expertise in that area and
Yeah.
that kind of I could totally see even if it just promoted like a webinar on a particular topic or check out a demo. That might
Mhm.
be interesting to do.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Casey.
High five. That's
I
it.
like
That's it. AI drink. Okay, great. Well, everything's rosy, everything's happy, podcasts are the best,
They are.
and sometimes they're challenging. So my question almost like on the flip side is, you know, what's the challenge that you face right now with your show specifically when it comes to podcasting?
I think, um, this is gonna sound like when you're in a work interview and you, like, change the question into something
Uh,
positive, but
I
it's
work
honestly
too hard, right?
the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah, I work too hard. I care too much. Um, Truly, the biggest challenge right now is also the opportunity, and we're on a pause after season 9, um, and I do feel pressure to get going on season 10, but I wanna do something different. Not for any reason other than I'm like, I wanna do something cooler and different, like, I think it's time. And so, I think that's the biggest challenge is, like, how do we do something different? What is the right kind of different? How can we cut through the noise? Because there's a lot. How can we be really relevant and interesting? And to your point, what you just said, kind of on a different note, like, and really be a good example of, "Hey, there is no box. You don't have to be in any box. Do what you want." Serve your audience and serve them well and get creative in doing so. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now is what we do next. So
Yeah, and when you've had successful ideas in the past, it sets the bar high, and I definitely detect, and this is true with marketing as well. There's always the artist, the creator, where even if it is B2B, there's still that aspect of you're creating art and
Mhm.
you don't just want to throw it out there. And again, back to ChatGPT and AI, everyone can drink now. Like you want to create something. And
Yeah.
so this pressure is almost your own pressure on yourself. I'm sure everyone would be happy to tune in like always, but there's something in you that wants to make this special.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I do care too much.
Yeah, 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 it is but there's something about it. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone would be totally fine if you just did exactly what you did last season. Everyone
Yeah.
would be totally fine with it. They'd be like, "Cool, it's back."
But
But
it's such a
you
fun
wouldn't.
opportunity to get creative and to just, I don't know, do something, one that's fun and, that just, I don't know, keeps things light
Have
and,
you thought of hey, do you have any ideas of what you're gonna do? Any, like, crazy things?
um, I don't know, you have to stay tuned.
Stay tuned to find out.
Yeah. Check out the Cast podcast whenever season 10 comes out.
Do you listen to other well, I mean, see, we're in this industry, you listen but, like, do you listen to non B2B podcasts and just sort of entertainment ones?
I do, and I kinda get all over the place,
Yeah,
and it really is I'm not a nonfiction reader, and I'm sorry, I'm not a fiction reader, and I'm not a fiction, like, podcast or, like, entertainment podcast listener.
sure.
So, I listen to a lot of authors that I like and speakers that I like, a lot of Brené Brown and Mel Robbins and, um, you know, Adam Grant, that kinda stuff. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Small world with all these names for sure. My wife is a librarian, and she would tell you, "You just haven't found your genre yet." Because there
Yeah,
is a fiction genre out there for you, just
I'm
waiting
sure.
to be discovered. It's
I'm
probably
sure.
good that you haven't found it yet because then your number of books you've read this year will go from, you know,
A
0
lot
fiction books to, like,
to yeah.
18.
Now I have no shortage of nonfiction books,
I
but
know, you get plenty to read, right? And it's still fun to buy more even if you have ones that you still need to read.
I know.
It's classic,
Definitely
classic.
guilty of that.
I the reason I asked this too is because just like between different industries and oftentimes you can pick up different techniques from, oh, manufacturing is doing this or, SaaS is doing that. I could try that in my own industry. I always just wonder about the different podcasts I listen to. And I'm always challenged by this particular thing, which are some of these more narrative storytelling podcasts that have one of those moments where you're hearing about someone who's parents died and they missed their opportunity or, things happened that changed their life dramatically. And
Mhm.
it's like, is that restricted to only the B2C show?
Yeah.
Does that have a place? Do any of these woof moments or whoosh moments? That's probably the sound whoosh. Do they have, like,
Mhm.
and for me, that's something that I've been like fascinated by. But it's like, how do I blend that in? It's like
Yeah.
whatever you're fascinated by, how can you mesh that into a business show, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, I think that's where the beauty and opportunity of creativity comes into play because, again, there is no box. Inspiration can, turn into some really cool things, even in B2B. You can be inspired by entertainment and B2C and really breathe life into it, into a B2C or B2B kinda show. So,
Yeah, just whatever
yeah,
inspires you, just go with it.
just
Just
go
go
with
with
it.
it.
Just go with it, man.
So tell me, if I wanted to get more information on Casted, if I want to connect with you, get
Cool.
a demo, get content, get thought leadership, know about when the podcast is launching, where are the places I go
Yeah.
and click and subscribe
All
and
good things to do. I highly encourage you to do all of the above.
all the
Um,
time?
yeah, Casted is at casted.us, so casted.us. I'm really active on LinkedIn, and the podcast is the Casted Podcast. Try to keep it
Boom.
simple.
Keep it simple. Yeah. And for those listening, already, but if you're new, we put all these links in there for you. So you don't need to be typing while you're mowing the lawn or
Yeah, don't do that.
riding a bike or just click. You can just touch the link in the show notes and go there.
There you
Save
go.
yourself some fingers, uh,
Yes,
and reach out. Lindsay, this has been awesome. Like, I don't know if the time has like flown by.
did.
I feel like we discussed a million things condensed into this time period, and it's been
See how
so much fun.
broad meta can be?
Seriously. Seriously,
Seriously.
and we didn't get too stuck thinking about the fact that we're doing the thing while discussing the thing,
Yeah.
Didn't
Good
get
job,
us,
us.
didn't trap us. Yeah, yeah. So thank you. Thank you for coming
Thank
on here,
you.
teaching me all these things.
Well, thanks for having me, Casey. This was a lot of fun.
Hell yeah. And for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back. I've run out of room. I'm in the margins, all these things. Then share this with someone else. One person, 9 people, 3,000 people, whatever, but put your take on it. What was your number one takeaway? Was it around the idea of getting rid of those canned questions and maybe leaving the nest and going to, you know, a different kind of podcast that maybe builds trust? What was it? Was it the human connection? Well, whatever your thoughts are, put them on LinkedIn, share it, tag myself, tag Lindsay. We'll hop in there like comment ninjas and have a great time. We'll all just create a whole discussion. All right, everyone. This has been a crazy cool episode of Creating the Greatest Show. We will see you all next time. And next time doesn't have to be next week. Life's too short, and we have way too much to talk about. Find show notes full of takeaways, lessons, and links at creatingthegreatestshow.com. For more information on launching your own podcast or working with us to produce your existing show, come on down to the big tent at ringmaster.com. Until then, friends, whatever you do, do it with all your might. Work at it, if necessary, early and late, in season and out of season, not leaving a stone unturned and never deferring for a single hour that which can be done just as well now. P.T. Barnum.